Alright, I am currently in my hot ass deck at my nice property because I'm a tube doucher, YouTube douchebag trash that thinks I'm a filmmaker who is out here just filming myself in the hot sun. Horrible lighting, horrible heat. It is probably like 86, 87 today. And yeah, I'm just outside on my deck with the sun beating down on two cameras. It's the LUMIX S1II and the Sony FX3. And what I'm trying to do here is just basically film in 5.1K 60p to see if the S1 Mark II overheats. Currently have it set up with the tilter cage with the V-mount attachment, basically my whole rig that I will be using on a wedding shoot, because this is my real world test, because I have two weddings coming up, one in a couple days and another one next week. And potentially, if I'm going to be outside in the sun and I'm in a situation where I'm standing in direct sunlight during the ceremony, processional, when everyone's walking down the aisle, bride and her dad and all that stuff, it could probably take 10 minutes, and usually I film in 60 frames per second because I might want to slow things down during that time. And yeah, if I'm going to film 5.1K 60p open gate during this time, I'll probably be holding the camera and I'll need it to run 4K or 5.1K 60 for probably, at least 8 minutes, 10 minutes, what have you. So that's why I'm doing a test this way, because this is how I would do it. This is how I would use the LUMIX S1II at 60 frames per second for a long period of time, quote unquote, more than 5 minutes. Yeah, this is how it would be. So sorry for the horrendous lighting. Sorry for, it's a weird situation, but it is what it is. I'm gonna sit here and hopefully the camera will last at least 10 minutes. I actually just recently picked up this lens. This is the L-mount Sigma 24 f2. I like to film my YouTube talking heads in 24 at 24 millimeters, and I've been doing it at like f1.4 or f1.8 this whole time with Sony. So with Lumix, unfortunately, the options are very thin. On Sony, I've mentioned this before, have 24 millimeters, tons of 24 millimeter f1.8 lenses for like 300, 400 bucks. The cheapest one I found here was this 24 f2 Sigma DGDN. DN stands for D's nuts, as my nuts are dripping with sweat at the moment out here. And it was like 500 bucks used. So there's that at MVP, not sponsored. So we're gonna sit out here. FX3 right now, it's filming the screen just for proof, but whatever. If you guys want to sit there and say this is a bullshit test, you could say whatever you want. But I don't even know if the screen could be seen, but I'm using the FX3. It is filming right now. I think I press record. Yeah, it's filming right now with the Sony 28 to 70 f2, and the S1 Mark II is using the Sigma 28 to 45 f1.8 Sigma L mount, and because that's the lens that I will be using on a wedding day. So look, maybe the V-mount external battery causes some heating. I've heard that doing USB-C power causes additional heating to the S1II. Also, I'm using a CFast, ProGrade CFast 512 gigabyte card in the Lumix. So that also causes additional heat. I'll link a video to a YouTuber, I forgot his name, but I'll link a video where he did like a bunch of tests, and basically CFast Express causes more heat than SD. So if you are worried about overheating on the Lumix S1II or whatever, you would use an SD card versus instead of a CFast, but I'm using the CFast, and I'm using V-mount battery, USB-C powering the Lumix. So I hope it doesn't overheat, because, you know, I've never had an issue with the FX3 4K 60 frames per second filming 10 plus minutes on 4K 60. But to be fair, the FX3 does only have 12 megapixels. It is not having to process nearly as much as what the Lumix S1II is processing. So we'll see. You know, I don't think the FX3 have any chance of overheat. Something else I have to mention: cages help with cameras overheating, and I've never had any of my cameras overheat during any professional shoot, and it might be because I always have a cage on all of my cameras. Cage draws heat towards itself and not into the body of the camera. Alright, so the S1II is blinking now. That's not good. I don't even know how long it's been. I wonder what that blinking is for. Is it blinking for overheat warning? I am starting to get overheat warning on the S1 Mark II. Now it's blinking really fast, so it's probably about to turn off. I don't even know how long it's been. It hasn't even been 5 minutes. It has not been 5 minutes. This could be a problem. Alright, now I'm back out here, standard 4K 60, non 5.1K open gate. I don't have all day, but the camera didn't really get to cool down too much. I removed the CFast Express. I put the SDXC card in, 512 SDXC card from Sovereign, and now I'm just setting regular 4K 60 10-bit, and hopefully this lasts longer. The 5.1K, and also I'm just running off battery, not USB-C charging through the V-mount. I'll probably just end up keeping the setup as is, even if I'm not using the V-mount, just for the weight, you know, for handheld stability. But it's full cage everything, off battery, same lens. I'm not doing the Sony. I'm not trying to do all that setup. And the Sony already lasted. That was just more so just to proof that I was like filming it. I don't even know if I'm going to use that in this video, but we'll see. Shutter is not cranked. Okay, now the sun is going back out. So there's another thing that got to make sure I address, is that earlier the sun was out full force. Now it's just kind of like intermittently coming in and out. But the camera, so when the sun is out, the camera is getting beaten down by the sun. Open. I'm only gonna be here for a little bit, so you guys come out. Don't go downstairs.
He's just probably rather be with you.
Oh, hey Jackson, don't go down there. You don't have shoes. So yeah, so I'm gonna just sit here and see how long this lasts. No, don't climb on that too. It's glass. So just sit down. Yep. So we'll chill here for the next bit, and hopefully this camera doesn't overheat. If it does overheat, actually in these conditions, 4K 60, non-open gate, whatever, then we'll have a big problem, because it was a little hotter earlier. Can you close the screen door? Yep. So we will hang out here for quite a bit. Hey, don't climb on this. It's glass. Don't stand on that. No climbing on that table, okay? Yeah, it's definitely a lot more chill out here now. This is probably even more realistic in terms of temperature wise, because it's really rare where I'm in a situation where the sun is beating me down like that at a wedding, because a lot of times guests, they would move the ceremony into different type of situation. So that situation earlier, although concerning, it is a really rare situation where I am standing there in the direct heat like that.
Make sure Jackson doesn't climb up this. Make sure Jackson doesn't climb up this.
Yeah, don't climb on the table, okay? It's glass, it'll break.
No,
Will the autofocus recover? Oh, it did. Shocker of the century.
I said make sure he doesn't climb on here.
All right.
What if he jumps
What are we at? 4 minutes? Just hope that stays as is, or else it's gonna be problematic for everybody. You have no shoes, bud. At least it's not too hot right now, right, guys?
Yeah.
Want to count to 10? 1, 2. Hey. Chillin'. Hey, Jackson. Don't touch it.
No, it's pretty hot out now.
Now the sun is out in full force. As you can see, I went from Asian to Caucasian really quick. We are at 5 minutes. So I just need this thing to get to 10 minutes and I'm good.
Halfway.
Jackson, don't get on that.
Halfway.
Yep. What I'm trying to do, Emmy, is that I don't want, sometimes the camera, when it gets too hot, it'll turn off. And if I'm recording something and I need it to record for longer than, 5, 6, 7 minutes, but if it turns off, it's not a good thing, right? So because it's getting too hot, so I want to make sure that the camera doesn't get too hot and that it can go to 10 minutes like this.
For the test.
Yeah. So these conditions now are exactly the way it was earlier, where the camera overheated at 6 minutes, a little bit over 6 minutes. So hopefully the sun stays out, and then for these final 5 minutes that it gets beaten down like this. Right now the tally light is just solid red, which is good, but if it starts blinking, that means the camera is getting hot like my nuts. So, hey, Jackson, sit down, bud. Don't go on that. Don't go on the table. Hey, and don't go downstairs either. You need shoes. Currently summer vacation. Hey. So I'm trying to make a quick buck from these ad rev to feed these kids, I know we living in poverty out here on this suburban single family home in America. Yep. It's a struggle. Hey.
The spider web. How much minutes?
Let's see what we got. We are at 7 minutes and 50 seconds. So this is looking better. So it looks like for ceremonies, for wedding ceremonies, 4K 60, not 5.1K 60 open gate, and an SDXC card is probably the best bet. SDXC card 4K 60 if you're going to be filming like 10 minutes of a wedding processional, which is typically how long it would take. Because then after that I start filming just B-rolls on and off. moving around, and I have cameras on each side of the bride and groom getting like the long duration stuff in 24 frames per second to get the vows and all that. So because this main camera is just like B-roll cam, so, you know, this is the one that's always on me, and I'm just, you know, running around filming stuff. So, you know, a lot of times I'm not worried about, you know, this camera, you know, being a long duration shoot. Like the longest it'll shoot 60 frames per second is when everyone is walking down the aisle. Whole bridal party, let's say it's like eight groomsmen, 8 bridesmaids, you know, groom, parents, and the bride and her dad, or the bride and the mom, depending on the situation. Sit down. Sit down, bud. Don't climb on that again, please.
How much big? Okay, we have to stay for like probably 20 more seconds.
Why is that? All right, so now the light is blinking at 9 minutes and 50 seconds. So not a good result either way, because ideally I would not want to see that blinking at all. So we'll see when this thing is going to turn off. I mean, because the first 5 minutes, it wasn't like beating down hot, you know, like it is right now. So yeah, we'll a lot of times, even during a wedding ceremony, recording the processional, I don't film all the way through. Sometimes they do take pauses because they take a long time to get out sometimes. So all right, now all right, so after you know, doing all the tests, and I was talking to a fellow wedding videographer who, you know, does a lot of Panasonic work. He suggested that I try doing he suggested that I do 4K 60 422 and then turn the fan on high and record to the SDXC. So with the fan on high, because before it was on auto, on high, 4K 60p in direct sunlight, just this time just on the grass and not with like my white house beating on the camera. It lasted a little bit over 17 minutes. Let me see. It lasted 17 minutes and 17 seconds to be exact. And I did had it on for like probably a minute without the fan on high, and I realized it. So, you know, we're talking about 17 to 18 minutes of 4K 60 recording in direct sunlight, about 87 degrees. So that's that.
Really mixed up.
There's currently nothing ideal about the situation that I'm in right now. It is, what is this? Natural light situation. So the lighting is going to constantly change on these windows, and it's going to get dark and all that. And I don't have artificial lighting to help maintain white balance and exposure and all that. So, but nothing was as unideal as a situation I was just in outside testing the Lumix S1II in direct sunlight for overheating in 4K and 5.1K 60 frames per second open gate. So as you can see, the results were not ideal. So 4K 60 frames per second, so 5.1K 60 frames per second open gate lasted a total of like a little bit over 6 minutes. And that was with a CFast Express Type B from ProGrade, with external USB-C power going into the USB-C port of the camera, which is not necessarily good for heating. And then we had I took the camera back inside, let it cool down a bit, and now just use straight up internal battery at only 4K 60, 10-bit 420, and it lasted. And I switched out the CFast Express card for an SDXC V60 from Sovereign, and that lasted a little bit over 10 minutes. The FX3, when I used FX3, it didn't show any signs of overheating after 6 minutes, and I didn't really bother. The reason why we needed to do this test was because I'm filming a wedding on Saturday, and if I'm in a situation where it's direct sunlight like this, I wanted to know what to expect. And I've been in situations like that with FX3, and it never overheated. So first thing I want to address is the FX3, that some people had said that the FX3 is old and it's overpriced. And I think this kind of test right here shows why the FX3 is not overpriced, because there is no other camera under $4,000 USD that can film 4K 60 full frame of the sensor reliably without overheating. Granted, it's not like the sharpest 4K 60, because it's basically just an actual 4K readout, versus a lot of these other cameras like the Lumix S1II is just downscaling 6K to 4K. But the concern here is that if you're a wedding filmmaker and someone who will actually have a good reason to film 4K 60 frames per second or 5.1K 60, whatever, because during the processional, there's some points during the edit, you may want to slow down the footage, like during the handoff of the bride to the groom from the father of the bride, or sometimes as the father walks away, he kind of wipes away a tear. Those kinds of things are really good for slow motion. Things happen during the processional that slow motion can definitely enhance the story, and that's why a lot of us who film weddings, we film in 60 frames per second during the processional, so that we get these moments. And those processionals could be anywhere between 5-10 minutes, depending on how big the bridal party is, how many people are walking down, how long it takes for everyone to settle in. And those are genuinely full 5 to 10 minute takes, full 5 to 10 minute long wedding videos. 5 to 10 minute long video clips. And that's something that you guys in Florida, Texas and stuff, guys who are constantly shooting in 90-degree plus heat outside with the sun coming down on you, you got to be careful with that. Again, 4K 60, 5.1K 60, longer than 5 minutes recording for me is quite rare. Even in wedding ceremony situations like that, it's rare. And a lot of times I'd be chilling in the shade or whatever before it starts. And if I were to use this S1 Mark II in that situation, I would prepare myself for that. Do whatever it is I can to make sure that it doesn't, it has the least chance of overheating, maybe even switching to 4K 30. And unfortunately, going back to 2019 where, 4K 60 wasn't that prominent in full frame, we had to do 4K 30. It's crazy to think. And it's even more crazy to think it's not like the Lumix S1 Mark II doesn't have things built in it to control heat. It has fans. It has multiple fan speeds. It has it has a bigger body than A7 IV and things like that. And then like this kind of situation makes me realize like there is place for the FX2. A lot of people laugh at the FX2, it's A7 IV, whatever, but it is a camera that you know you could put out there in the sun and it will last. And I know a lot of guys will say the S5 II and S5 IIX don't have any problems, so that's great. You know, like I'm not doubting you. But then I heard, you know, a lot of times, a lot of people are saying like RA log C and this S1 Mark II is going to be perfect for like using S1II for like a crash cam to use with RE and stuff like that. So imagine using this as a crash cam for real. Like let's say someone's filming like, I don't know, Mad Max, where it's like out in the desert, it's hot. Or if you've seen like shows like The Walking Dead where it's like really hot, you could tell they're sweating and stuff. It's filmed in Georgia, you know, outside live. Or like if you're like you know, how the creator was filmed, you know, in like Indonesia or some Thailand where it's like hot and humid all the time. Can the Lumix S1II be reliably used for that if the film crew goes over, wants to turn on this crash cam, and you know it has to run for a bit, you know, and they might want to use 60 frames per second, you know, slow motion and stuff like that, and it overheats, and then once it overheats, there's nothing you could do. You got to turn the camera off, and hopefully that when you turn it back on, it's going to be usable. That's concerning. And also, a lot of times, guys who film wedding ceremonies and stuff, you want to have redundancy. You want to film dual card slots because cards might corrupt or whatever, and at least you have backup. But in this case, if CFast is unreliable in terms of heating, and then you have SDXC only, you have to you're basically filming one of, or probably the most important part of a wedding day on one card. And yeah, you have other angles, but if you're the main and you have the main angle of everyone walking down, so you see the bride and the father's face walking towards you, walking towards your camera, that's like the main shot. And you know, you run the risk of overheating or you run the risk of card corruption or something, then that's a big problem. And you know, I'm still going to use the S1 Mark II to film the wedding this week on Saturday, and of course, whatever happens, I'll report back. You know, I'm gonna do a video about that too on my YouTube channel. But these are the types of things that a lot of times, you know, a standard YouTube review is not gonna cover, and even like a standard, you know, indoor test of overheating is going to cover. And then, you know, it even took me a bit of thought to realize what long duration 60p is used for. And it, you know, another wedding filmmaker mentioned to me, who's also testing this, he's the one who told me that, you know, he was testing 4K 60 for 10 minutes to see if it will last. And I was like, why? And I realized that that's the one, you know, I'm always thinking like long duration was always on tripod, you know, doing interviews and stuff like that. But you do have the camera going during the ceremony, during the beginning of the ceremony in 60 frames per second very often. So that's a concern with the S1 Mark II. So if you're like still thinking about it, think about how you're going to film, what kind of situation you're in a lot. And if you're prepared to make adjustments for the camera when it comes to like this 60 frames per second overheating issue. And also, I'm not sure if there's any firmware type of thing with the Lumix in terms of like if the threshold is too low. Whereas, so example, when I touched the FX3 at like 6-minute point, it was warm. And it wasn't like the Lumix S1II felt any more warm than FX3 when it shut down. So is it like a threshold that Lumix has set on the camera in terms of like how hot it could get before it shuts off? I don't know. Like I had the heat, you know, heat threshold on high and all that stuff. So we'll see what happens going forward. Am I changing my mind with, if the S1 Mark II is good or not? No, it's a good camera. Am I disappointed that it has this whole overheating issue? Yes. Mainly because I didn't even think it would be a thing, considering, Lumix's reputation. But here we are. So hopefully this video is informative, insightful, whatever. So yeah. So as always, what should we ask viewers to do at the end of each YouTube video?
Like and subscribe to the channel.
Say it again.
Like and subscribe to the channel.
You heard her. So, when an Asian lady tells you to do something, you have to do it right away. Peace.
Hey man, you got a new camera?
Yeah, this is actually the Lumix S1II. I actually have it all rigged out with the tilter cage on it. Those tube doucher shills actually weren't shilling. This is a great camera.
Oh my god, Lumix S1 Mark II. It's trash and unprofessional.
Why do you say that?
It have an overheat problem.
Bro, I use this camera to film 6K open gate for like 3 hours. 5.1K 60 frames per second open gate in like 95-degree weather. I didn't even get an overheat warning.
No man, I have a friend with an uncle who cousin saw on the Facebook a guy say his friend father with a Lumix S1 Mark II it overheat in 5 minutes with 4K 60.
They must have been in India filming Indian street food directly on top of a bucket of hot brown oil surrounded by hot and humid sweaty pits.
You need to do the overheat test outside in direct sunlight 4K 60.
Bro, no one films a long duration 4K 60p in shitty ass direct sunlight. I am not gonna do a bunch of unrealistic overheating tests.
Let me show you. You could film the camera with 4K 60 put in the microwave. It overheat. It unprofessional. You film the camera 4K 60 in the air fryer. It overheat. It unprofessional. You film the camera like that 4K 60. It overheat. It unprofessional.
Bro, back your mouth away from the damn camera. Your hot ass fish sauce breath will melt the camera before it even overheats.